Well, we often like to joke around at the start of the show, but actually we've got something a little bit serious to say today, don't we, Bharat?
We certainly do, Mel. And, for the next half an hour, we're going to talk about, who was good and bad and ridiculous on the field. But what we saw yesterday with the Christian Eriksen incident, and our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. It was another reminder that sport is played by human beings. They're people like you and me. And what I thought yesterday was a great sign of, it was a moment that us as human beings should rejoice in. I thought the way the players came together, the crowds chanting his name, both the Finnish and the Danish fans, and it was such a real moment. And that's the greatest thing about sport. It allows us to feel such real human emotions, and I'm just glad he's better. He's doing better, is what we're hearing. And I thought we should start on that. And of course, now we can go ahead and completely rip England apart.
Absolutely. Okay, that was a serious part of the show. Now we're about to get really serious, so roll the bumper. Hello and welcome to The Good, The Bad, The Ridiculous. And guess what? I see in the comments there that Kane Williamson says hello. Now, surely that must be the real one because let's face it, he doesn't have anything to do this week. He's not playing. So what better to do than tune in and join that with us? So, hey, Kane, love watching you in the nets. Go well, as they say.
He's feeling good as well, he says. He's feeling good about the final, brilliant bowlers and batters. So good on you, Kane. Good on you.
He's always been a big fan of us, clearly. We know that. What a day. What a shambolic day it was for England. That shouldn't take away from how good New Zealand are. But yeah, it's all a bit, everything that's good and that's bad and ridiculous seems to be on the England side at the moment. I'm just going to actually start with Mitra. Ridiculous. New Zealand with population of 5 million, changing 6 players between tests and still dominating. Really puts a dent in Justin Langer's comments on India's population. And I haven't actually thought about it in that way, but look, it's a good point. We know that New Zealand punch above their weight, and it would be really interesting to break down and look at some of the reasons they have been able to develop this depth and continue to produce batters. Where England's not the only country that struggles to produce, batters who are not only of high quality but also consistency.
Yeah, exactly. Australia is really struggling with that as well. We've seen a lot of young and middle-aged, from a cricketing sense, batsmen being tried here in Australia who really haven't taken to Test cricket the way the Australian selectors would want to. Look, that's a very good point from Mitra. I've heard this phrase before from a lot of people that New Zealand punch above their weight, but right now, they are the heavyweights. I think they are the super heavyweights in Test cricket, just the way, not just the way they're playing and beating teams of high quality. Yes, they did play a lot of cricket at home last year, but just the depth, right? You're right, making 6 changes and seeing the likes of Matt Henry. A team is doing really well when you see guys like Matt Henry and Will Young, and then you're like, oh, how come these guys aren't playing Test cricket? That's when a team is really on top. That's what happened with Australia at their peak, West Indies at their peak, and it's happening with India as well these days. So a very good point. And Justin Langer's comments on India's population, I guess.
And just like it's similar. I've just seen one from Abhishek saying Adam Lyth, Hasib Hamid, or Milan for the India series and Ashes. Look, I think maybe the scariest thing for England at the moment is that they've arguably got the best batters in there. We've spoken about Ben Stokes being out, and there are a few others who played in the IPL, but it's not like there's criticism about them playing almost a B team and resting some of their players, and perhaps there is a penalty to play for that. But I don't think that you sort of look around. It's not like there are all these other cricketers out there who are batting better than these guys. Like these are some of the best young, not some of them not even all that young, but generally the best young batters in the country. So if you go back, like when, apart from Joe Root, who was the last English batter to come into the side who's been a real consistent success at test level, like as a specialist batter? It's pretty hard to say. To be able to do it consistently, they're just not producing them, and I think that's part of the problem. Maybe there's something in it. If you look at like New Zealand, maybe partly because they're smaller, they haven't thrown all their eggs into we have to have this big T20 tournament that takes over our summer. They still have it. They still play, of course, but it doesn't have. And they've always been much freer about letting their players actually go and get their T20 experience, elsewhere around the world, and they've sort of come to terms with that. But it doesn't. It's not like Australia and England, where India is a different story within itself. But Australia and England, where now England's going for the 100, and all their cricket sort of being all over the place as far as domestic first class cricket goes. Could there be something of that in New Zealand's success?
I think there are a variety of reasons. We've heard Simon Dool talk about how they've improved the pitches. For the longest time, if you looked at the first class stats for the Kiwis, it used to be and that's why they produce so many so-called dibbly-dobblies, or like the fast medium bowlers who would swing the ball, and many Colin de Grandos, to be honest. And there were some big scores being made. It was very dreary, if anything, like first class cricket in New Zealand. But look, they've said, okay, we're going to put out these sporting pitches, these greenish pitches, and the other country who has done that in the last 4 or 5 years, improved their pitches, is India. And in my book, there's no surprise that India and New Zealand have made it to the final, because what it has done is it's made sure that the batsmen who come through the ranks are used to batting in difficult conditions. And similarly, because it's a good mix of pitches, bowlers know how to take wickets on different kinds of pitches. And that's really what has led to this. But I think England are in many ways suffering an identity crisis with how they're going about this whole rotation. Yes, it's worked for them in the past. Most times it hasn't. Yes, you need to protect your players. I understand that. But it really doesn't make sense, Joss Butler playing in we spoke about it yesterday as well, T20 Blast, while there's a test match on. You don't have. I know there are 5 test matches against India. There are 5 test matches against Australia, but you have a 2-month gap between this test and the first test against India. So I don't think him playing these 2 tests, for example, Ben Stokes, I understand, is injured, would have taken that much away from Joss Butler's fitness. I don't know. There is. At some point, they need to find the right balance between mollycoddling your cricketers to an extent, and putting out your best 11 to play Test cricket. Having said that, like you said, Lawrence, Sibley, Crawley, Burns, and Pope. If that is the future, and that's what the England selectors seem to have decided upon. It is worrisome. It's not scary yet, but it's worrisome if Ollie Pope and the likes just don't take to Test cricket in the sense, I saw someone tweet out, and there are so many comments about Pope as well. He's got enough chances now. But the fact that Joe Root 2012 was the last guy I didn't give it much thought before you said it, Mel. It's worrying. That's almost 9 years since someone made a debut as a batsman. I guess Rory Burns comes the closest.
Yeah. It's. There's a little bit of reap what you sow about it all, I think. So anyway, let's go to some of our Twitter nominations that have come in from Andra Lover. Andra Lover. Lucky Andra, I say. Good. Ajaz Patel averages 9.12. Bad. Somehow everyone ignores. Ridiculous. He is only second spinner. Well, we haven't ignored it. Yay. Don't put us there. Hashtag not all under, I don't know. There's been a fair bit of talk about him, obviously, around this series, and he's made, I think, a really good fist of this opportunity to be there. I suppose it gets to the point where New Zealand's batting is pretty good. If they've got their best batting lineup there, Santner's batting becomes less of a less important, I guess, in the overall scheme of things. Do you think that we might see Patel in the I guess the World Test Championship final?
Only if Mitchell Santner is not fit. I still think the way New Zealand look at the spinner's role is very much just to bowl 15 overs, give 40 runs away. If you get a couple of wickets, great. Even in the second innings, they back the likes of Neil Wagner to win their matches. He's done it so many times in the fourth innings or the second innings of it. The opposition second innings. So I don't think they always look at the spinner as a match-winning option. But having Mitchell Santner batting at number 7, or number 7 or number 8, just adds so much more depth to that batting. And like I said earlier, maybe they might not even pick a spinner. Colin de Grandhomme plays and then they play all 4 seamers. That's the way I would go. I mean, if I was New Zealand, you have, a little bit of Kane Williamson if really needed. But I don't know. Ajaz Patel, it's unfortunate. Like, we spoke about Daniel Vettori and how no other New Zealand spinners got a long run. It's because of that. And now with fast bowling resources that they have, I think they'll be more concerned about the team balance than necessarily wanting a spinner on the side, especially in South Africa.
Yeah, I just say one there, bad English commitment towards Test cricket. I don't know if you saw if you saw Nasser Hussain's rant about batting. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on Twitter because boy, oh boy, did he let loose with both barrels. Basically said they've decided they're going to do it their own way. All of you who've played Test cricket in the past, you've got it wrong. And he was absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. He didn't hold anything back, and it's worthwhile watching. Okay, next nomination is from Linux Leah. Hello. Good. Tom Latham will win a series as New Zealand captain in England. Bad Kane Williamson won't. The moment the series is won counts. Captaining a draw in the last game doesn't count. Sorry. That's a bit harsh, really, isn't it? But speaking of the draw in the last match, though, too, like, everyone who was saying that England should have been more aggressive and tried to chase down the win, do you actually think they could have done it now? I mean, really? Do you actually think they would have had a snowflake's chance in hell of doing that? I think that puts it down. But yeah, Kane Williamson, who is actually watching the show right now, sorry, Kane, that's fairly disappointing for you, isn't it?
I have a feeling that Kane Williamson knew about Linux Lee's tweet or nomination. I think that's the reason he's here, just to see what we say about Kane Williamson. And, because of that, I actually kind of agree with Lee, because if you remember 2004, when Australia finally beat India in a test series at home after 1969, well, Adam Gilchrist captained Australia in the two tests that they did win. And it was only when Australia lost, or Bunting came back for that Bombay test, that they lost. So Adam Gilchrist technically won that series, but the credit always goes to Ricky Ponting. And that's unfortunately one of those quirks with cricket. The only reason Rahane was, Rahane got to lift the trophy was because Virat Kohli was in another continent, welcoming the birth of his son. But if Virat Kohli was there, say he was injured for the last 2 test matches, or maybe the last 3 test matches, and he was still there, the chances are Virat Kohli, as the official captain of the tour, would have been the one lifting the trophy, which is what will happen later today when if New Zealand win. You'll see it will be Kane Williamson. But, we have Kane on the show, so maybe we can ask him if he's keen to let Tom Latham lift the series trophy.
I just have to bring this up from Sartak, who says, Kane, if you're watching, don't ever shave. All right, please shave. Oh, why start now? Why ruin a good thing after putting all that effort into it? I say keep the beard. I say keep it. But that actually did make me laugh a lot. Okay, our next nomination. Good. Wagner, this is from AB Cricket 19. Good. Wagner back to bowling bouncers, showed his full range of skills today. Bad. England's batting's over-reliance on the absentees. Everyone looks like they're a much better player when they're not playing. Funny thing, doesn't it, too? I'd just like to point that out. We've we've sort of spoken about Wagner and how he's often seen as a one-dimensional bowler in a way, and everyone thinks about the bouncers as his sort of stock in trade and main weapon. And we've really seen his ability to swing the ball and, just as a more rounded bowler, I think, as well. And then the bouncers are back. And I think he's just shown again that this is such a good New Zealand bowling lineup. I mean, seriously, it is so good. And that's what it boils down to. I mean, you can look at all England's deficiencies and everything else. I mean, I think they've bowled quite well. Their fielding's been terrible. Their batting has been woeful. But at the end of the day, it's just a better England team. And Neil Wagner is just one part of that. But over-reliance on the absentees, for sure. That's something that we've pointed out, the balance in the team that's so much better with Stokes. But like I said, the players who are there are the players who are there. And, and I don't want to bring it back to the Ashes all the time. I don't want to do that. But when I'd said before with Australia's batting woes, that this would probably be England's best chance to win in Australia for quite a few tours. And I still think it's England's best chance, probably in a few tours, but Australia are overwhelmingly favourites. So what does that say?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to bring up the Ashes. There was a comment in here I saw sometime back about who is responsible for all this Ashes talk. Clearly, it is Melinda. There you go. 29 Dilip P7 Totham. Yeah, anything happened outside the Ashes in any test series, are they good or bad? Somehow they link it to the Ashes. I'm pointing at that day. No, but there you go. Good point, Dilip. I have, I'll use a pro wrestling analogy. It's the Ashes is like the WrestleMania, because even with WrestleMania they start talking about who's going to be in the main event some 9-10 months before it actually happens. It's by the time this year's WrestleMania ends, they're already talking about next year's WrestleMania. It's pretty much like that with the Ashes. But just coming to Neil Wagner, you're so right, Mel. I think the beauty of this New Zealand bowling attack is it's not just that the bowling attack has a lot of variety. It's just the fact that each member of that bowling attack himself has so much variety. And Neil Wagner, there's been, I'm disappointed that so many people, even the experts on Sky, keep talking about him as a bouncer bowler. Looks like he's trying to. And a couple of times, Simon Dool, who's watched a lot of Neil Wagner, even said, when he landed in New Zealand, he was a swing bowler, and then he developed this bouncer. But they still don't listen. People just don't listen. I go back to that interview I did with Wagner last year, where he said he enjoys taking wickets with the fuller ball than he does with the short ball. And he's just so confident with that short ball that he doesn't even need to practice it. He always knows he has that in the back pocket. And he actually adjusts beautifully to the conditions. And so do the likes of Southee and Trent Bolt and Kyle Jamieson and Colin de Grandhomme and Matt Henry. So, you have to feel for poor Matt Henry, right? Like, he's never played more than 2 consecutive tests. And here he is who's put on, I think, his best test performance that I've seen. And he'll have to put out the next test. And who knows when New Zealand are playing a test match after that. So, and this has been the story of his career. And poor guy is already 32, I think. So, I don't know how many years he has left. As far as the bad nomination about, England's absentees, it's just one of those things that, like you said earlier, these are not guys who've been picked. It's not an experiment that England are really conducting by saying, how is the future? This is actually the future. I mean, Ollie Pope averages over 50, I think, in first-class cricket. James Bracey, another one, had a poor shocker of a start to Test cricket, but it's really poor. I also saw a comment from someone else saying that, but even with Butler and Stokes back, it doesn't mean that this New Zealand team could not have beaten this England team. And I totally agree. Ben Stokes can do anything. He's a magician on the field, but I don't know if even Ben Stokes could have provided that solidarity to this batting lineup.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Okay, next nomination up, please. 80s is the new 90s, eh? 5 bats out in the 80s. Also, New Zealand lead first innings by 85. Too many 80s this game, ridiculous. Dan Lawrence was stranded on the 80s. We had a nomination about this. We had like about 3 or 4 nominations on this point. What the hell's going on with the 80s?
For a while, the New Zealand scoreboard yesterday, at least the top order, read like my weight chart monthly. It was 80. I was 82 last month. Now I've come back down to 80. I mean, nobody really needs to know or wants to know how much I weigh, but there you go. It was damn funny. And I was glad it stayed there, because if I had seen an 84 or 85 next, I would have been concerned. I almost looked at it. I started looking at it as my weight chart. So if I had seen an 85, I would have been. It would have meant maybe I'm going to gain a few kilos in the next 1 month. I am watching my weight, as you know, Mel. But it's just one of those things. It's great for people who love stats. I'm sure Andrew Sampson and Rick Finlay would have loved it, because I don't think it had ever happened before. I saw so many tweets about the 80s and the 90s yesterday. The AG80s, I saw somebody talk about the AG80s, Mel. So,
Yeah, you see, maybe it's sticking. I see that Sam Ratman are also pointing out that Sean McGill also got out on 85.
Yeah.
So, see? It's like, let's all get out our crimped hair and our primary coloured go-go shirts or whatever they were and get back to the 80s. I'm in. I love an 80s fancy dress.
Absolutely. Best time for metal music.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, we can bring in that side of the 80s as well. Okay, next nomination up, please. Good. England's veteran pacers Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson picked up 5 important wickets in total, which was needed by England. Bad Dan Lawrence's inconsistency. First innings 80, second innings 0. Well, to be honest, you could apply that across everything. And also, to be honest, yeah, it's good that Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson have done what they've done, but there's just no support. And there wasn't any support in the field either with some of the fielding that we saw. So it's really frustrating for those guys. How much are they meant to do?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I felt so bad for Stuart Broad, especially when the catch was dropped at fine leg. Just his reaction, there was that, you'd expect a fast bowler to get angry, show some emotion. Fact that he just looked very, very anxiously, very eagerly at someone taking the catch. I think it was Dom Best. And then the catch gets dropped. He just turns around like there's no emotion, almost a sense of resignation. And I think we've seen it so many times in Test cricket. It's very rare that a team drops so many catches and then still stays in the game. It tells you a lot about what's happening up there when you see teams drop catches, and not just one person. Like James Bracey had a very difficult Test match behind the stumps, and the keeper generally sets the tone on the field. And when you have a keeper struggling, I guess it catches on. But yeah, I mean, I thought Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson as a pair bowled as well as they have in a long time, maybe ever, in this Test match. It was really good to watch them, but no support at all. And Dan Lawrence, like we touched upon earlier, somebody just needs to get out there and make a really big score. The fact that after all this, Rory Burns still looks like the only one who is a certainty for, forget about the Ashes, even for that first test against India, tells you the kind of state the English batting is in. And if you don't believe us, again, go and watch Nasser Hussain.
Okay, next nomination, please. I'm keeping an eye on one here. Okay, so I'm going to read out this one from Muglu. Good, Bracey finally has a run to his name this series. And there's also one that's come in ridiculous from Pawan Kumar. Ridiculous. James Bracey keeping is not up to the mark. Is he ready for international cricket? At the end, he wasn't really supposed to be there keeping for this match. That wasn't why he was brought into the side. So I've got a fair bit of sympathy for him, and I know a lot of people have been bagging his keeping. There are better keepers in England. Well, we all know that, and that would normally be in that side. So that's just him in the end. And the irony is, coming in, it was supposed to be his batting that got him in there, and in the end, there was something almost pathetic to the point of feeling really sorry for him when he actually got off the mark and people were cheering him. I was like, oh wow, that's kind of a bit sad, really. But yeah, so he he in the end, he hasn't done his batting reputation a lot of good. His keeping reputation has also taken a battering. So it's been pretty difficult for him. But you're coming into the side for one thing, and then you end up with this other role. That's going to be difficult as well. But you get these opportunities, and I guess it's up to you to rise to him. Whether he has the talent with the gloves, I don't know if he actually does. I think he's probably better, though. He's a better batter than what we've seen so far in international cricket, anyway.
For sure. I think, also the fact that it's not easy keeping in England. We've seen even the experienced likes of MS Dhoni struggled in the past. Even on his second tour, I think 2014, or that was his third tour, he struggled. So it's not easy keeping there. And suddenly you have someone who with 16 matches, he kept wickets only in 16 games, suddenly being thrown into the deep end. We spoke about this a couple of days earlier, and you just said it, Mel. Like, he would have been thinking about this Test summer as being maybe a chance for him to break in as a batsman. And then you throw him in there, and he's had dropped catches. You see his first two dismissals in Test cricket. He got really good balls. I don't think he could have done much about them. Coming around the wicket, he was bowled, and then in the first innings of this Test, you could see he was anxious for that first run. He just gets out. Yesterday, if he had come and scored some runs and looked good with the bat, it would have been a miracle after the day he had behind the stumps. And it wasn't just the catches that were dropped, but just he was struggling to even collect balls. And it was a little up and down as well. It didn't help his cause even a little. So, you have to feel bad for James Bracey. And there is definitely some talent. There's been so much talk about him. There's been such good things written about him. So the good thing now for not just him, but for a lot of these English batsmen is there's a gap now between now and their next Test match, 1.5 months. And maybe they go back to their counties and play some white ball cricket. Maybe just start hitting the ball and get back into a good frame of mind. Otherwise, they're going to struggle. So thankfully for England as a team and these young batsmen, the next series is not weeks' time.
Yeah, it just did make me chuckle. Ankush Ujwal saying, after seeing Bracey keeping, we can say that Rishabh Pant is not that bad after all. Harsh. He goes all right, does Rishabh? Doesn't he? He's been going all right.
He's been scoring a lot of runs, Mel, in that game. I thought he scored 100. Someone wanted to bring it up earlier, said that you would be very happy with it. When Rishabh Pant scores a run or does anything on the field, Mel Farrell, regardless of whether she is at the ground or not, has a chuckle. I mean, she smiles, and she smiles wider than any other time.
I just have to, there's one from Shanky there. I think in the case of the English team, the proverb you reap what you sow fits perfectly. As much as I want India to win in England this year, I don't want them to play against this team. Oof, that's a bit harsh. Well, maybe not. We'll see. Maybe they can recover. Look, cricket, it's a funny old game, and things do have the ability to turn around from one match to another, from one series to the other. And one day we're criticising players who turn around and end up playing much better down the track. But Bharat, what was the goodest thing of day 3?
Everything about New Zealand. Yes, not just, we spoke so much about their bowling, but I thought the lower order contributions from the likes of Tom Blundell, who just looks like the perfect replacement for BJ Watling. They tried him out up the order as an opener when they were looking for a partner for Tom Latham with mixed returns. But, BJ Watling's a gritty fighter. He's come and saved the day so many times for New Zealand in the last 10, 12 years. But with Tom Blundell, you could see a different kind of dynamic in that New Zealand middle order. Someone who he does like to play his shots. So he could make or break games. He could play a Matt Pryor-like role in that middle order. And then the catching in the slips yesterday was exceptional from New Zealand. And it just showed, it looked even better since England were dropping sitters in the slips. Joe Root as well. So I thought the catching was exceptional. They're just doing everything right. If I was a cynic, I would be worried if I was a New Zealand fan. I was like, why are they doing everything so right 1 week after? These are like the warm-up games. You can look at it if you are looking at the World Test Championship final, and they're just peaking. Are they peaking too soon? That's a question that could be asked. But everything about New Zealand was just spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was your baddest thing?
Well, we could just have called the show ridiculous today, because just how ridiculous England looked, not just with the bat on the field, with the catching, with the bowling was I thought a little substandard, except Broad and Anderson. Both Wood and Ollie Stone leaked a lot of runs. But despite that being a bad, I think there might be a silver lining, because the last time New Zealand won a test series in England, if I'm not wrong, was in 1999. And everything changed in English cricket to the extent that, Nasir Hussain became the Captain Grumpy. And, they had a great run for the next 2 years. They won in Pakistan. They won in Sri Lanka. They could well have had a documentary made about that 2-year period, like they did with, what was the documentary called? The one with Barney made a couple of years ago.
Yeah, The Edge.
The Edge, yeah. I mean, they could have had
excellent. Go watch that if you haven't watched it. Go watch The Edge.
Really good. Yep. For me, Edge Test, I don't know. I think I saw the Edge first, so I guess the Edge is closer to my heart than the Test is. I haven't seen the whole of the Test anyway, Test documentary. But so maybe there is a silver lining, and they can not turn things around, but address some issues they have with Test cricket right now.
Yeah, and what is your ridiculousest thing for the day?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I just think I can't move on from some of the shots that were played by the English. But the fact that Ajaz Patel came in and got a couple of wickets, when it was all about the seamers. Everybody was talking about the seamers and how good they are, and then you have like this portly, cute, spinner coming and taking wickets. And for me, also his batting was, it will get forgotten on a day where so many wickets fell and New Zealand dominated. But I think for me, the funnest part of the day was watching him bat. It reminded me so much of Rangana Herath with the bat. Him just taking that one step towards leg stump and looking so comfortable against, and Jimmy Anderson playing his 162nd test match. Jimmy Anderson could not get rid of him. So for me, Ajaz Patel's batting was the most ridiculous thing of the day.
Okay, I'll take that one in. And also for all of you out there, hey, thanks so much for being part of the show. Arpan asked what the deadline is in IST, Australian Eastern Standard Time, by which we need to send in the nominations. Look, you can send in nominations anytime throughout the day's play. We probably collate them about an hour before we come and do the show, and we do try and get through some of the ones that are in the live chat as well. So lots of the nominations. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them, but we really do try and do as many as possible. But yeah, here's a tip that if you get them in sometime during the play or after the play, then there's an even better chance. Don't tell anyone I told you that. It's top secret. Anyway, now that you've washed and dried your hair, you can go and brush it now, because you've got a few strands there.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't finished drying it. I was on time today. So yeah, good, bad, ridiculous. There you go. I'm the winner.
Hallelujah! It's a miracle. Okay, guys, we'll see you tomorrow for what is sure to be the last episode of the series. So don't miss it. Send in your nominations. We'd love to see you. See you tomorrow.